Welcome to episode 27 of The Brainy Business, Understanding the Psychology of Why People Buy. This Behavioral Economics Foundations episode is all about the sense of hearing and sound. Ready? Let's get started.
You are listening to the Brainy Business Podcast, where we dig into the psychology of why people buy and help you incorporate behavioral economics into your business, making it more brain-friendly. Now here's your host, Melina Palmer.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melina Palmer, and I want to welcome you to the Brainy Business Podcast. We are chugging along in this series on the five senses. We've already talked about sight, smell, and taste, and today is all about our sense of hearing and sound. As a vocalist, avid music lover, and podcaster, sound and the sense of hearing is very near and dear to my heart. I know many of you listen to this with headphones in, so really bad sound could make or break the podcast. Have you ever tried to listen to a podcast with bad sound? Maybe one of an earlier episode of a podcast or one that you just tried to tune into, and maybe the volume changes as someone's interviewing a guest, or the music is really loud, or there's crackling in the background. No matter how great the content is, if you can't get past the audio, no one will hear it, which is why I invested in good audio from the beginning. That's just some of what we're going to talk about on today's episode. But before we get to all that, it's time for shoutouts. While all the shoutouts are special, this one may be my favorite of all time. To be determined. There's a lot of time left, but so far it's my favorite, I think. I'm pretty confident this is my youngest loyal listener, and so I really want to take a moment to thank her for listening. Clara Gromer is 8 years old and loves to listen to the Brainy Business Podcast with her mom. I've heard Clara loves to draw and write and aspires to own her own art studio/gallery someday, which is very exciting. Clara, you are investing in your dreams and growing your brain so early. I know you will be successful in whatever you choose to do. Thank you so much for choosing to listen to The Brainy Business, and I hope we get to meet in person someday. Thank you again to all my listeners and social media engagers. I love to hear from you and appreciate you all. My gift to you each week is this podcast. If you feel inclined at this season of giving to reciprocate with a gift in return, please consider rating and leaving a review of the podcast. I love getting and reading those reviews, and it helps others to find the content when there are more reviews available. If you do leave a review, keep a listen out on a future episode where you will probably hear me give you a shout out and a link to your business in the show notes. That's just my way of saying thank you. The show notes can be found within the app you're listening to or by visiting the website at thebrainybusiness.com/27 because this is episode 27. The show notes include links to studies, articles, complimentary episodes, and usually anyone with a shout out. And you can also find a freebie worksheet for any foundational episodes like this one. When you download the freebie, you will be put on the list and given a secret link to all the freebies so you can access them at any time without having to sign up over and over. Again, the freebie for this episode is at thebrainybusiness.com/27. And if you're in the States and want to sign up for your phone, simply text the word Brainy, BRAINY, to 345-345 to get onto the list. And to say thank you, I will send you a free copy of my ebook, The 10 Behavioral Economics Concepts You Need to Know and How to Apply Them, which is also available on the subscriber page of the website. All right, that's it for shoutouts and housekeeping items. Let's talk about hearing and sound. Sound is basically just air. It hits the outside of our ears first, which helps to determine where a sound is coming from as sound waves bounce off of them. The ear canal then works like an amplifier on the way to the eardrum. And it's not just a clever name. The eardrum works like a physical drum by turning the air that hits it into a physical vibration, which will pass along to the tiny bones of the inner ear, and they start to move and shake as well. This causes the fluid of the inner ear to sort of slosh around, stimulating tiny hairs in the ear, which move molecules around and send signals to the brain to be interpreted as sound. This is also what controls equilibrium and allows you to stand up and know the difference between what's up and down. Basically, it's what allows us to live life not in the fetal position, I guess. So the sound and vibration will then move along to the snail shell shaped cochlea, which has 20,000 fibers to help determine different sounds and translate those to electrical pulses, which make their way to the brain for interpretation. They start out small and stiff, and as you wind your way through the cochlea, they get longer and looser, and they can resonate at different frequencies. Think about a harp or guitar strings that can bend differently based on the type of sound. This is what allows you to interpret different sounds through those different vibrations. High frequency, fast moving waves have a higher pitch, and those with a lower, slower frequency are going to be coming in at a lower pitch. The brain knows what you're hearing based on the specific hair that's moving, and the louder the sound, the more it moves. If they're too loud, those little hairs can get damaged, sometimes permanently, which leads to hearing loss or ringing in your ears after going to a concert or something like that. The vibration of sound waves is at the core of all sound and what we hear. Different instruments or voices make different sounds because they vibrate and amplify the air differently. Eventually, all this information makes it to the frontal lobe in the brain so that you can make sense of everything and understand what it is that you're hearing. I've linked to a couple of really interesting and useful YouTube videos in the show notes if you want all the technical terms and things like that. But as with the other senses, all you really need to know for our purposes is that your body takes in a stimulus that needs to be interpreted by the brain to actually mean anything to you. It's really amazing when you think about all the things our brains can do at once, isn't it? We can quickly figure out where the 11 million bits of information coming to our brains comes from. There's a lot going on that the subconscious has to sift through to decide what your conscious brain can actually pay attention to. No wonder it's hard for our businesses to break through the clutter. Speaking of which, hearing has a similar ability to distract and take over everything in the same way as smell does, which I've talked about before. If you remember from my It's Not About the Cookie series, I talk about the scent of the cookies triggering the brain and how a good smell can flag your brain in a positive way. But a bad smell, like burnt popcorn in an office, can make it so no one can get any work done because they're too distracted by that gross scent. Last week, I actually had a call where one of my clients needed me to repeat something because they were distracted in their office. They had not yet heard that episode on change management. We ended up talking about it, but they had said after part of the conversation where there was a bit of a pause, they said, "Sorry, someone burned a bag of popcorn and we were just talking about how awful it was and I completely missed what you said." Oh man, it ended up being really funny and very perfect timing as I'm in the midst of these episodes on senses. They were very excited to learn more about the burnt popcorn smell and its impact on the office, and I love to share. So we talked about that for a few minutes before getting back to the direct mail campaign we were working on. Anyway, sound has a similar impact on our ability to perform. While doing some research for this episode, I brought some articles with me to the salon while I was getting my hair done. Often it's pretty quiet in there, so I can get some work done while my color's setting in. But today, everyone was very chatty, and I was so distracted by the sounds around me, I couldn't take anything in that I was reading. I kept trying and going back and thinking, just focus on the words, but I couldn't. My brain got so focused and caught up on all the sounds and words and tidbits, things coming in through my ears, that I could not fully interpret or retain anything I was trying to read. I'm sure you've experienced this before. When too much is going on around you, it's easy to get overwhelmed and be unable to focus. This is why noise-canceling headphones are so great on airplanes and are used by professional athletes everywhere. They help block out everything else and bring focus. Beats by Dre has a campaign called Above the Noise and another one called Hear What You Want, which showcase different athletes wearing their headphones to create the experience they want in training or walking through a slew of paparazzi or opposing fans into a game. You can literally flip a switch and tune everything out, which is appealing when you want to focus. Many athletes have been known to have pre-game rituals, and much of that includes sound and music. They have songs they need to listen to in order to prep and get pumped for the game. Have you ever listened to a really great song and felt your whole body change? Maybe you were in a slump driving home, tired, unfocused, and then, boom, this is my jam, right? All of a sudden, you're dancing and feel electrified, awake, ready to go. How does that work? Music is amazing and powerful. I've linked to a fantastic Netflix series called Explained, which has an episode dedicated to music. I'm going to give you some of the highlights here, but it's really interesting, especially if you're someone who loves and makes music, and hearing all those notes and the things they talk about can make a difference. So there's a link in the show notes if you want to check it out. The video gets into what music is, how and when sound becomes music, and why humans have been able to master the art of music. Researchers have found musical instruments as old as cave paintings, and every single culture on Earth has been found to have some sort of musical component. Clearly, this is very important to humans. And it turns out we are unique in our ability to understand, predict, and interpret music. There have been a few cases of animals, you could count them on one hand, that can identify a beat or a melody, but they can't combine all the facets together, pitch, melody, harmony, rhythm, to make music. A bird that learns a tune can't recognize the same notes when they go up or down the scale. When you tap along to a beat, you have to be able to anticipate what's coming and start the tap or clap or snap before the sound comes. Monkeys can know that there is a beat, but they can't predict or match it. We truly are unique as humans in being able to understand and create music, and this impacts more than just our ears. Studies have shown that our bodies physically react to music in amazing ways. A quick tempo in a song will make our heart beat faster. A slow song can bring your heart rate down. Music releases chemicals in the brain. Some make you feel good, and some can be tied to negative emotions. Singing releases these positive emotions even more. The body actually changes when music is played, which is really amazing. If you want to get pumped up before an important call, maybe you've got a sales call, you're wanting to close a deal, you can choose a really great song and listen to it before to get you excited and ready to go. And I know for me, I personally can't exercise without listening to up-tempo music. I need that beat in my brain. But how does sound become music? The easiest way to turn any sound into music is to repeat it. Have you ever seen a video of Ed Sheeran performing any of his songs using a loop pedal? I have, of course, linked to one for you in the show notes. He essentially makes a bunch of random sounds and sets them to repeat. First, he strums out a quick guitar line, sort of like the bass line, then a few notes on the keyboard. Then he sings the various pieces of the chorus, building the piece as he goes. And voila, a song is born. I've said it on the show many times before, but our brains love repetition. Familiarity is favored, and music is all about repeating. When researchers played the sound of rainfall to a group of participants, they were then asked to rate the sound quality from completely environmental sound to completely music. The first time they heard it, they all said it was an environmental sound. Then, after it was repeated a few times, everyone started to laugh because magically it became music. Music impacts our brains differently than words, and it can actually help people to heal. Studies have shown that people with Parkinson's who might not be able to move without shaking or that have trouble controlling their movements can actually move around with much greater control and range when there's music playing. The music changes them, the way their brain processes, and helps them to move. Similarly, someone who has a brain injury that caused them to lose their ability to speak, maybe they can't say more than 2 or 3 words together, can sing full songs and remember all the words, notes, and speeds. It's fascinating to watch, and you can see a little of this in that Netflix documentary in the show notes. So, what does all this have to do with business? Back in the 70s, Philip Kotler published a paper called Atmospherics as a Marketing Tool. This revealed how different emotional states can be triggered by businesses in retail environments to influence buying behavior. This includes all the senses, including sounds. Remember how I said a song can pump you up and get your heart beating faster? Studies have shown that restaurants playing faster music can turn more clientele than those who play slower music. But if you play slower music, people are more likely to stay longer and buy more. For example, when medium tempo music was played, diners ordered 3 or more drinks. Understanding how you make money can make it easy to pull the right levers so you can increase your revenue by getting people to naturally shift the way they interact with your business on a subconscious level. And what about the type of music? Grocery stores tested out playing stereotypically French or German music in the wine section, and it impacted the type of wine customers bought. And of course, everyone said the music had no impact on their choice, but the receipts showed a very different story. Many grocery stores will play slow music to encourage you to reduce your pace and stay in the store longer, and you end up buying more. Mall shoppers have been found to take longer and pay more attention to each item when slower music is playing as well. If you have a physical location, what type of music are you playing? Often, people feel that the individuals working in the store all day should be able to choose the music playing in the space. After all, they're going to be listening to it the most, so it should be something they like, right? Unfortunately, not. Studies have shown that stores need to carefully select music that matches the brand to encourage shoppers to stay in a store longer. Perceived fit of music to the brand increased time in the store and the amount people purchased. Locations that played music that was a better fit increased time in a store by 22 minutes. That can make a really big difference to the bottom line. So, while it may be tempting to give in to employees who want to select music based on their tastes, know that if it's outside your brand persona, it could be doing a lot of damage. What about familiar music? Customers reported that they shopped longer when they were exposed to familiar music, but in reality, they were there longer when exposed to music they didn't know. So familiar music may make it seem like someone's around for a longer period of time, and this could impact perceived wait times. The emotion of the music can impact the way a consumer feels about the brand they're interacting with and the way they think about the wait times. I've linked to a study on perceived wait times and perception of the services environment in banking for all my bank and credit union friends listening. In short, the music playing impacts the way people approach you and all the interactions you have. This is all about priming, which is the focus of episode 18, and I've linked to that in the show notes so you can go back and listen to it after this one. As I say in that episode, and so many others, everything leading up to the sale, conversation, price, or item being sold matters more than the price or item itself. Everything matters, including the sounds people hear before they interact with you and during the time they're interacting with your company. Of course, I could not complete a section on music and brands and not mention jingles. I get it. You hate them, right? You think they're annoying. You vow you would never use one yourself. But they work. Just like brands should have scent logos, many have sound logos as well. Sounds have a strong connection to memory, emotion, and behavior. And jingles associate brands into our brains in a different way than images or words alone. And jingles don't have to be just jingles. They can be all sorts of things. And you probably associate all kinds of sounds with their brands and don't even realize it. Let's play a game, shall we? I'm going to play some sounds and you guess the brand. Go ahead and shout out your answers like I can hear you. Are you ready? Okay, here's the first sound. Do you know what that was? It's Microsoft Windows XP. All right, next. How about that one? That was T-Mobile. All right, here's one more for you. That, of course, was State Farm. And what about this one? That was McDonald's. And here is one of my personal favorites to show how an entire franchise can be tied to sound. If you are one of the millions of fans of this, you should get it nearly instantaneously. All right, here we go. All right, I won't play the entire theme song, although I would love to. But for all you Harry Potter fans who heard that, did you instantly get excited like I do? It only takes a split second, but you know right away what that sound means, and it can change your entire demeanor, right? That is the power of sound on the way we relate to brands, and little changes can make a big difference. I've linked to a fun article that shows what the creepiest scary movie soundtracks sound like when changed from a minor to a major key. They become almost comical. Check out the show notes to hear what Jaws or Psycho sounds like when in a cheerful major key. And in case you didn't know, sounds can really make or break movies. They say if you're ever watching a movie and get too scared to put it on mute, it completely changes the experience. I've also linked to a video of Mrs. Doubtfire recut as a horror movie. The trailer is only 2 minutes long, and a happy version of The Shining. In short, sound matters. For example, when I was choosing the sound for my podcast intro and outro, I was very selective of what would bring the right feeling and vibe to the podcast. And I've matched that in my speaker reel video. I didn't want something everyone else had or could use, so I bought the rights to a song that less people will get instead of using free stock music. This helps people relate to me. And when you hear the podcast music, if you've been an avid listener of the Brainy business, you should know it's me, even if you hear it out of context, because you probably haven't heard it anywhere else. Similarly, when choosing a voice for the intro and outro, I had to be really strategic about whether I had a male or a female voice, how that would come across, what words they were saying, vocal inflection, and more. I use these tools when recording episodes as well. I'm often smiling while I'm talking, learned that from my days working in a call center. People truly can hear if you're smiling or not, and it makes a difference in the way they interact with you. Think of how different the experience of this podcast would be if I said, "Welcome to episode 27 of the Brainy Business. I'm your host, Melina Palmer." Wah, wah, wah. Same words, completely different experience because of the way it sounds. This is one of the many blocks of content in my online course about how to launch a brain-friendly podcast using behavioral economics. If you're interested in learning more about that or getting on the pre-sale list, send an email to melina@thebrainybusiness.com. And before we close out this episode on hearing and sound, I want to give a brief introduction to a very advanced lesson on how sound can impact pricing. The study I've linked to found that the way a number is sounded out can impact the way the price is perceived as being big or small, more than the mere number does alone. They did this by testing out the way words are formed, vowels and consonants, to determine what is a big sound versus a small sound. And this was built on research from 1929 and another study from 1933. So it's been around for a while. But the new research was specifically looking at pricing and the way people interpret discounts. Some vowels can sound bigger or give the perception of being bigger than others based on the shape your mouth creates to form the sound. Think of an "oh" versus an "e." This is also different than consonants like "t," which can be more closed off. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty, but this study found that bigger associations in the phonetics translated to a bigger price in the brain, like the form of a discount. It felt bigger when it was associated with this bigger space than with the smaller sound and space. This was done automatically on a subconscious level, and they tested across languages to show the difference. So someone who spoke both English and Chinese fluently was shown the same price in both languages, like $7.88, $7.88, where one had a big sound and the other had a small sound when you were to translate the way someone would say them. And that impacted the way they perceived the price and the item overall when that same person was rehearsing and thinking of it in English versus Chinese. And this can impact the way prices are interpreted even when they're not heard or spoken, which is important to know as well. Pretty cool, but very, very advanced. If you want to know more about pricing, check out the episode on unlocking the power of numbers. That's episode 17, and it's a little bit easier to relate to. You can also learn more about this in episode 5, The Truth About Pricing. And if you would like help with incorporating sound properly into your business, you're not alone. This is exactly what I work with my clients on in our virtual strategy sessions. We work through incorporating behavioral economic strategies into everything from pricing to branding and change management to imagery or sound. And don't forget, Now is the perfect time to up-level your brand with a series of strategy sessions in 2019 for up to 20% off. Instead of $4.99 for each strategy session, they're as low as $400 a piece if you know upfront you want to do 12, meaning you could save as much as $1,200. Such a great deal. But you have to commit before the end of the year. So if you're thinking about making an investment in your business by taking me up on this offer, send an email to melina@thebrainybusiness.com. Even if you just felt a twinge of maybe, send an email. There's no obligation to buy. We'll simply have a discovery session and see if it's a fit. You don't want to miss out on your opportunity to take advantage of this great deal. Just think of all the success you could have in your business with the right focus, partner, and brain-friendly messaging. I'm so excited to work with you in 2019 and help incorporate behavioral economics into your business, making it more brain-friendly. Again, that email is melina@thebrainybusiness.com. All right, that's it. Episode 27 on sound and hearing is complete. Next week on episode 28, we are closing out the series on senses and the year with an episode dedicated to touch. This is a huge trigger for perceived ownership and loss aversion. You can check out episode 9 in advance of that one if you want to learn more about that, and you're not going to want to miss it. Until then, thanks again for listening and learning with me. And remember to be thoughtful.
Thank you for listening to the Brainy Business Podcast. Melina offers virtual strategy sessions, workshops, and other services to help businesses be more brain-friendly. For more free resources, visit thebrainybusiness.com.